Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I'm going to be going over the books that I've read for the first half of January. This is my first mid-month wrap-up for 2024. I think I read 12 books for the first half of the month, so not amazing, not where I wanted to be, but still pretty good. This year I told myself I'm not going to beat up on myself anymore for not reading a certain amount of books and just have fun with it. So I'm going to be satisfied with that, and hopefully I'll get a lot of books finished in the last half of January. I am still debating doing weekly wrap-ups, but with all the pain that I've had with my dental work and swelling, and I still have more to do, you guys. It's insane. I just didn't feel like doing it. So we're going to start out with the mid-month and end-of-the-month wrap-ups for 2024, and we'll see if I transition to do weekly wrap-ups. Let me know down below if that's something you'd be interested in. I always wondered if I did enough books to do weekly wrap-up, but we know how I tend to gush or rant and talk a long time about books, so some part of me thinks a weekly wrap-up might be better, so we'll see. We'll see. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started with my books that I've read for the first half of January. Okay, so the first book that I read was Lords of Wrath. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about these two books. Honestly, I might as well do them back to back, even though I didn't read them back to back. I'll just quickly go over them with you. I finished the Royals of Forsyth University series. It's a reverse harem, dark bully, major dub-con, non-con kind of book. I really liked the first book. It sucked me in. But the second book, which is Lords of Wrath, this is by Angel Lawson and Samantha Rue. I was really frustrated with it. It was not a romance at all. I get when you have a reverse harem, you kind of have to have multiple books to kind of get to know each of the characters, make each man's have their own characteristics, have their own connection with the heroine. It needs to build up to that. And really good reverse harems do this really well, where you can feel the connection with each of the men. In this, it's such a bully, horrible situation that, there is literally no romance in this book. She has, I don't even know if I want to set this up, but in the first book, the heroine is being stalked. She's on the run from her stalker, and so she basically shows up at the university to be the lady for these lords. They're kind of like different fraternities. And they basically get to have a lady and do whatever they want with her. She's kind of like their little slut, slave, whatever you want to call it. And she agrees to do this, and it's her stepbrother and his friends, because she needs protection from her stalker. And then in that book, they basically had been having kind of a game point system of who would get her virginity based off of things she would do with them, if she did it on her own, if she would give them a blowjob on her own. So she finds out about this point system near the end of the book, and she's pretty infuriated. So this book is her, I guess, trying to get revenge. And the way she goes about it is really, really stupid. The fact that she didn't think she was going to get caught. It was another too stupid to live heroine for me. And when she gets caught and they find out what she was up to, and some of the stuff she did was totally unforgivable. And these guys are total scumbags too. There's not a lot of redeeming qualities to these guys in this book. So, but I did even feel bad for one of them, because I think outing him is not being able to read at his performance where he's, he plays the piano and stuff, and humiliating him in front of people. I thought that was going a little too far, especially since he had a learning disability. But that's just me. I mean, the things these guys do are pretty horrible. So, but when they do find out, they end up kind of getting their own revenge on her, and they corner her in this it's like a mirror house thing at the carnival. and the stuff they do to her there. So the reason I didn't really fully like this was it was kind of like a forced branding, but honestly, they're like using their knife to put their initials into her body, while kind of like sexually assaulting her. And it just felt so hopeless. And there's just so much stuff going on. You're finding out, trying to figure out who her stalker is. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I mean, it was 0 romance. In my reverse harem, I want there to be romance in each of the books. Like, even if it's a non-con, I've read dub-con, non-con, but they managed to have me find endearing traits and see the guys falling for her and all that kind of stuff. So it's worth it. Like, you're okay with it, even though it's dub-con. But in this, it was just bad. So I gave it 3 stars, 3.5 chilies. Let me skip ahead because I was going to talk about it in order, but later I read Lords of Mercy, which is the final 3rd book. And I gave this one 4 stars. I can't really talk about it because it's the 3rd book in the series, but I feel like it was extremely, like, I was being nice giving it 4 stars, but this one had a lot more romance, building a romance with each character. My problem was it was so long. And I was bored, and I was like, I have arcs to read. I have things to get to. And it was like, I think it was like 500 something pages when it's already a 3-book thing. And I mean, like, I feel like the last 100 pages is almost like a full epilogue. So it's a nonstop epilogue of them like throughout like the future kind of thing as them all being together. And I was just like, did we need that? Like, you could have had like a short little novella if somebody wanted to continue reading like that many pages of an epilogue. I wasn't here for it, but I do think it was a good conclusion. I did feel like they all had a great dynamic, and, you know, you start to feel them falling in love with each other. But that 2nd book just was like, so I don't know. I don't know if I'd really recommend this series to anybody. I've read way better reverse harem romances. So that's my take on that. Okay, so then I read Saint by Sierra Simone. This is the 3rd book in the Priest series. If you've seen my vlog on Priest and Sinner, you will know I freaking hated Priest. I liked Sinner, it was good, but Saint is the best one. This is a 5-star book for me. It was so like angsty and emotional, and like Sierra Simone just puts you through the major feelings in this book, and it was so like heartbreaking but like beautiful and emotional. So what is it? I haven't even said. So this is between Aiden, which he goes by Father Patrick in this. He is one of the Bell brothers, and he actually was kind of like this playboy billionaire kind of guy. And he fell in love with his brother's best friend, which was Elijah. And they were in a really like good relationship. You know, he kind of, I think, had previously been with women, but he was like totally into Elijah and fell in love with him. And so, but what ends up happening is you're going to go through a lot with discovering what happened with Aiden, because he basically kind of picked up and left without like a conversation or a breakup conversation or anything. He just kind of left Elijah because he had struggled really badly with depression and anxiety, to the point where he was like ready to unalive himself. And when he got those thoughts going through his head, he kind of had this surprise text kind of thing that was like, I don't remember what it said, but it was something from the Bible, and it really like, it just happened at the perfect moment. And so he ends up turning to God. So he basically picks up, like, gets rid of all his money, and he becomes a monk. And he's been living like that. I don't know if it's been like a few years. I can't remember how many years it's been. But he's just, you know, living his daily life, trying to be faithful. So that's where his journey has led him. And it's a continuous struggle with the depression. And, you know, Elijah didn't really know any of that. He's a writer, and he comes to where Aiden is this monk to kind of do an article on it. But really, he's about to get married to a man, and he kind of needed closure. So he's there, and he ends up going on this big trip with Aiden for this story. And I mean, these two love each other so much. The angst, the emotions between these two, like, it's just so beautiful. I think that Simone handled, like, mental, depression, these kind of mental issues really well. And, I think anybody who's kind of felt like that can relate. So I really loved it. I think it was so, like, angsty. I was dying for these two to get together. And when they got together, it was freaking hot. So I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. My God, I hope you can't hear my cat growling in the background. But anyways, I gave it 5 stars, and I gave it 4 chilies because, like, these sex scenes were hot and they were emotional. So, like, I was just so invested in them. I will say the trigger warnings are for the depression and then the unaliving or suicidal thoughts. But I absolutely loved it. I did listen to this on audiobook on Anyplay. So I think all of them might be available on Anyplay. So if you're interested, definitely check it out. This is my favorite of the series. I think it's one of my favorite male romances I've ever read. So I highly recommend that. And you could literally go into that without reading the other 2 books. It's the best one. Okay, so then I read a novella. I read Citadel by Claire Kent. This is the 5th book in the Kindled series. I absolutely love this series. I love what Claire Kent's done with this, like, post-apocalyptic world. If you haven't read any of the other books, it's basically like an asteroid hit in the UK. And, there's long-reaching effects of it. So in the United States, people got really sick. And so these books kind of like this picks up like 5 years, I believe, after that event. And you've been following like kind of the same community in the other books. And this one was interesting because it kind of introduced new characters in a different community. And they were actually kind of in this, they're 2 sisters, basically. They live with a group. Our main heroine, her name is Dell. It's Delaney, but she goes by Dell. And her older sister has basically been using her body and sex to, like, get them safety and to protect her younger sister. Dell kind of dresses frumpy, like, has a shaved head. So, she's not, she's basically wants to protect her sister so she never has to do what she's doing. And I believe her book is the next book, so I'm really interested in the sister's book, too. So they like live in this hotel, and it's actually kind of near the coast, so it's mostly flooded. And Dell is going out scavenging. She runs across, I think it's coal. Yeah, she runs across coal, and he kind of warns her because he's with these group of guys. He's like, you need to get out of here. And so she kind of runs for it. And then later that day, like, they start getting attacked at this hotel, and it's by that group of men. Cole's with them, but he's not attacking. He's kind of, like, about to leave in, like, this boat because he doesn't want anything to do with this. He's just been trying to search for his brother. His brother got in with bad groups, and he's been kind of following this place wherever he hears word about it, trying to find his brother. So he basically sees things going down and offers to help the sisters escape. And then he's helping them get to a safe place. So this is where, like, Dell, like, starts to fall for him and is extremely attracted to him. And she's never been, like, really the one people pay attention to. And he's really focused on her. And her sister kind of warns her because she's like, he's not going to stay. He's looking for his brother. He's going to leave. So don't put yourself in that kind of position. But Dell can't help it. And so this actually happens with this road trip. They find a safe place, and, she's going to stay, and he doesn't. So then it's a couple years later, and he comes back, and she's pretty shut down with her emotions. And so it's like a second chance romance, which was really cool in this series because you usually don't get that kind of thing. And I really loved it. the way they have to go on another little adventure and trying to come together. It was so well done. I love, it's another age gap, another stoic hero that doesn't think he's good enough for the women. And it was just fantastic. I love this series so much. If you haven't read it yet, I would get started. Start with Last Light, which is a full book, and then jump into the Kindled series. It's fantastic. So I ended up giving this 5 stars, and then it's a 2.5 chilies. It was just the right enough of spice. And this is what I gotta say that I love about Claire Kent, is that she writes these novellas, but it's a full-fledged story. It's got great character development. It's got world building, and it's not just a novella full of smut like, say, Katie Roberts does. You know, like, this is a full story. And that's what I love about this series, because if you want something a little quick in between some books, it's a good story with amazing characters and an amazing world, and I love it. Okay, so I'm sorry, you may hear some weird sounds in the background, but my cats are playing with the toys. They always come out here when I'm filming to fuck off and fuck around. But anyways, the next book that I read was Scarred Regrets by Adelaide Forrest. This is the, I think, yeah, 5th book in the Blondie Crime Syndicate. I actually listened to this on Audible Plus. It's available for, if you have the Audible Plus membership, you can get it for free. So I think the whole series is on there. So if you're interested, and this is between Scar and Irina. I was really excited for this one because I really liked Scar in the first book. So Scar is actually the bodyguard to Mateo's wife. Mateo was like the hero from the first book. He like almost died like trying to save, you know, his Mateo's wife and everything. And he's a very scarred, broody, like damaged hero. And I've always loved my damaged heroes. So in this, you know, Scar has had a very tragic past. And this is what I will say. This is one of the most emotional, darkest out of the series. It definitely handles some heavy, heavy topics. I'm going to give you trigger warnings. It may give things away, but I think it's important you know those, because at the end of this, I'll give the trigger warnings and warn you. But I think it's important for you to know, because this has a lot of triggers in it and it's very dark. So he has actually a really bad past. He was like living on the streets with his sister, and he kind of like sold his body to keep them safe, to provide for them. But his sister had like drug addiction issues, and she ended up ODing at one point. So he actually gets taken in by the Blondies, and that's why he kind of is like a big boxer, fighter, and, you know, he works for the Blondies. And he notices Irina. She is, I believe, the mayor's daughter. She kind of comes off as like a silver spoon in her mouth kind of thing that he assumed she was. But she actually, like, I think she worked for orphanage or like some, I can't remember. But she's a really beautiful person trying to help people. And she is immediately taken with Scar. She tries to like seduce him. He kind of has a little bit of stalker tendencies because he's very obsessed with her. But he doesn't want to be touched. He can't be touched by people. And he just doesn't think he's good enough or could ever be with her. So, you know, they kind of have some interaction, some spicy stuff going on, but then he would keep pushing her away, and it was driving her crazy. So what ends up happening is it's like a couple years later of this kind of going on, and he had like bodyguards on her because her dad, because of who her dad was, she could be in danger, and everything like that. So she ends up getting kidnapped, and Scar basically drops all his, you know, holding himself away from her and trying to be, like, he goes after it hard to find her, and he's going to take care of her. But Irina comes back very damaged because she went through a lot when she was kidnapped. There is SA and torture and all of that kind of stuff. So she is severely, like, damaged and scarred, and she just doesn't think she should live. You know, there's just a lot going on. So he basically kind of takes her and he's like, you're mine, and he's claiming her, and it's just, you know, and he has to, they now she doesn't think she could be in a relationship or be good enough, and they have to kind of work through those things together, but he's able to kind of work her through those things. So again, this was very emotional, very dark subject matter. I'm going to say the trigger warning, so if you don't want to hear them, I kind of gave some of them just now. So basically there's sexual assault, essay, torture. This deals with sex trafficking. There is a suicide attempt, you know, suicidal thoughts, depression, PTSD, and obviously violence and murder. That's what you get with mafia romances. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think it was the most emotional yet. And then it did get pretty spicy, but I gave it about 3 chilies because we're dealing with some dark, like depressing stuff in this book. So then I read the new release by Jagger Cole. This is Toxic Love. I got the ARC for this and I was very excited. This is actually the first book in his new series. I believe it's called, Venomous Gods. And this kind of has ties to his previous series. I think it was The Dark Hearts, if that's what it was called. Anyways, I read those all back to back. Absolutely love that series. Really felt like in love with Jagger Cole this last year. And this one kind of has a character. He has a character kind of you've seen in those previous books. This is Dante's romance. And Dante was actually the owner of the kind of sex club that you saw in those books. I believe it was called Club Venom. And he needs to get married. So this is kind of like a setup for an arranged marriage because he kind of isn't fully in the mafia but has ties to mafia. He kind of deals in secrets and knowledge and knows dirty secrets about people. And he kind of has to answer to these families, these crime families. And so they want him married. So in order to keep his club, he's going to be marrying this 18-year-old that he didn't really want to marry. He doesn't care, but he's doing what he has to do. But she's actually the aunt to our heroine. So this is kind of weird because she's 18. She's younger than our heroine, but she's her aunt because her grandfather remarried and had like another daughter. It's a weird setup, you guys. But Tempest is our heroine, and she does not want her sweet little 18-year-old family member to be like sold off in marriage. And so she's going to take her place, and she tricks her way into doing that. The reason she's also up for doing this is because, and it tells you in the blurb, so I'm not giving anything away, but she's dying. So she's dying from some kind of liver disease. And so she knows she doesn't have that much time left, and whatever, she can get married to save her aunt. So she ends up kind of tricking him by signing like the blood contract when he didn't know it was her. And so that's kind of unbreakable. So they end up getting married. So this one was kind of crazy because the whole time I'm like, how are we going to have a HEA if she's dying? And you see the appointments with her doctor, and it does seem very dire. So it doesn't seem like it's fake or anything or a misunderstanding. So that was kind of like in the back of my mind most of the book, like, where are we going with this? And that doesn't really get, like, we don't even find out anything till like the very end. And with Jagger Cole, there's some craziness going on. Her family hates him because they think he was responsible for something like their other sister's death. And he's not telling them what really happened. So there's a lot of that animosity. And him and Tempest have this insane chemistry. So, I was going to give this 4 stars, but there is a really great scene where BDSM as healing is used because Tempest does have a very traumatic past. She was previously sexually assaulted, so there is previous SA mentioned in this. And so he actually does this whole BDSM kind of thing to like move her, like to help her with that. And to kind of show, like, not fully remove, but kind of help her through those PTSD triggers of, like, being held down or this or that. It was just a very moving scene. It was very beautiful. And I was fully in it. Like, I love BDSM as healing. I think it's such an amazing thing, and I love seeing it in books. So this brought it up, just that scene brought it up to like a 5-star for me. Yeah, there's some weird stuff going on in this book. So I mean, I could see why a lot of people were giving it 4.5 stars, but I absolutely love that BDSM scene. So I loved it. There was action at the end. It's Jagger Cole craziness. So I'm very excited to continue with this series. I ended up giving it the 5 stars. And then I gave it 4 chilies because there were some very sexy stuff like Jagger Cole does. Some good BDSM. All of that. So I definitely would recommend it. And if you didn't read the previous series, you could just jump into this one. You don't really need to read that one. Okay, guys, so this next one I'm really excited to talk about because it was my favorite of the month so far. And that is The Temptation of a Highlander by Elisa Braden. You guys, I don't know why it took so long to get back into this series. This is the 3rd book in the Midnights in Scotland. And I really liked the first book. The 2nd book I freaking loved. So I don't know why I didn't, I'm so bad at series. But I know that the 4th book is supposed to be coming out now this year in 2024. So I was like, I need to read that to catch up for that new release. And this was my favorite so far. It just blew me away. It's kind of got a darker setup for historical romance. In this, we have Clarissa. And she's an English, so she's not from Scotland, but she's an English woman, and she has a stalker. And it's not just like a cute little kind of stalker. This guy is dangerous. He does some pretty crazy things and escalates this situation to where she does not feel safe. She's living with her grandmother. They're kind of like not doing well money-wise because somebody else in the family kind of was the heir or whatever. I think it was like some cousin or something. I can't remember. But so she's living with her grandmother, and she felt like somebody was in her room. Some bad things happen. He escalates it where she's like, I can't stay here anymore. So they flee to Scotland, and she goes to stay with her friend, who is the heroine from the 2nd book. So she's staying with her friend and her husband, and she didn't tell them that she had this stalker. She figured she could kind of flee. The heroine in that previous book had gone through a really traumatic experience, so she didn't want to bring more trauma to her. But of course, the stalker follows her to Scotland and sends her like a letter, and it's very ominous and creepy, and this guy is scary. So she tells them the truth of what's going on, and they basically bring over Campbell. And Campbell is one of the older brothers, and he is a very stoic, grumpy, very serious kind of guy, and he's huge. Like, I think he might have been 6'7" or something, but he's huge, and Clarissa's been, like, entranced with him from the beginning. She's, like, obsessed with his big hands, and she always blurts out, like, sexual innuendos, not meaning to, like, very, inappropriate with him, and it just cracked me up. So, I mean, there's so many funny parts in this book. There's, like, excitement, intrigue, all this stuff going on. But he basically gets tasked with having her come out to his, basically, like, he lives, like, in this rundown, almost like shack kind of thing. He doesn't have furniture. He doesn't have anything. It's not this great setup home. But she basically goes out there with him unchaperoned. So perfect. He's got a couple house people that he has there and everything. And he's set to protect her. And what I loved about this is he doesn't just be like, oh, she's the damsel I need to protect. He, like, teaches her how to shoot. He's trying to teach her how to protect herself. And they have, like, this insane chemistry. And then, it kind of leads to, like, oh, well, you need to marry me so that I can protect you. And I love how he was, like, immediately like, I need to kill this guy. Like, right? Like, let's hunt this guy down and I'll kill him. But this guy is scary because he hunted, like, big game. He's, like, a sharpshooter, so he's like an excellent shooter. I mean, this guy is no ordinary stalker, so they have like their hands full with like a dangerous enemy. So, I mean, I love this. It had all the spice. It had funny moments. The side characters are amazing. It was just perfect. It was exactly what I needed. I want to read more historical romance, and it just got me feeling so good about historical. So, I gave this one 6 stars. So, this is my first 6-star read of 2024. And I'm so excited for her next book. Like, I can't wait for her next book. So, 6 stars and 3.5 chilies. Campbell is very serious or whatever, but he's a dirty talker. And I loved their connection. And she's kind of like a curvier heroine, and he's all about it. I loved it so much, you guys. Okay, I'm talking too long on each of these books again. This is why I was talking about doing weekly wrap-ups, you guys. So, I went on to another arc. Tessa Hale actually reached out to me. I've never read Tessa Hale before, surprisingly. And she asked if I wanted an arc. And she also happened to offer the ALC, the audiobook, for her new release. And it's not out yet. I think it comes out the 19th, I believe. So it should be releasing like this week. I'm not sure when I'm getting this video up. But this is actually Twilight of Embers. And it's a dragon shifter, like reverse harem, why choose kind of romance. And I freaking loved it. The audiobook, I freaking highly recommend. It is a full cast of characters. So you have 5 guys and you have 5 different male narrators, and then obviously the female that's narrating for and they have amazing narrators. I wish I would have written it down right here for you guys. Oh shoot, I don't have them off the top of my head, but I do know Teddy Hamilton was one of my favorites in there. But I think Jordan, it had a great cast, and they all like felt so different. So anyways, this is a dragon shifter romance, and our heroine, Hayden, she doesn't really know she's a dragon shifter. Her parents got killed. They kind of hid her in the prologue. They were like murdered, and so she kind of grew up away. And, you know, in that prologue, you could tell people were like looking for her. And so she kind of grew up not knowing what she is. So she shows up to this school at college, and she immediately runs into Knox, and he's our cinnamon roll, sweet, golden retriever football player, and he immediately recognizes her and that she's a shifter, a dragon shifter, and that she's their mate. So they like know in their unit, it's all of these 5 guys, it'll be their one mate. And so he's immediately like helps her around the school. He's so sweet, trying to be a friend to her because he doesn't want to freak her out. Then we have Easton, which is his twin brother. And Easton's pretty like, he's like the dick. He doesn't want to acknowledge her as like their mate. And then we have Maddox. He's a teacher. So we have a little bit of the teacher student in this. So he feels like he can't really go there. There's a lot more to his story too, I feel. And then we have Hale, and he's the like perfect damaged hero. He kind of sounds like, he looks like a Thor, you know, and he doesn't like to be touched by anyone but her. He's like super sweet and protective and touch her and you die vibes. Then we have Killian, and he is actually like a nightclub owner. He used to be like a boxer, and now he's like a billionaire. And he's super alpha and sexy. So you have all these guys, and they are trying to be protective of her. They want her as their mate. Everyone except for Easton. And so you have a lot of intrigue of going around of like them trying to protect her, and also her not knowing what she really is. And if she fully like starts doing stuff with them, it could start this mating thing and put her into a kind of a heat. And Dragon like women aren't that common, so they're scared of other, you know, dragons finding out about her. So there's a lot of excitement going on. The audiobook was so fast-paced. I felt like this is what good reverse harem is where each relationship feels significant. She has a connection to each of the guys. I feel they're very individual and unique to each other. So, and it was like lots of feel-good, you know, stuff. I love fated mates. So I absolutely love this. I highly recommend the audiobook. I gave it 5 stars and 2 chilies because not too much sexual stuff goes on yet. But there's some fun stuff. But I really, really loved it. Then I read another arc. I read lots of arcs. I had way too many this month, you guys. So I read Sinner's Salvation by Bianca Borell. This is the 4th and final book in her Syndicate of Sinners series. This one was a little interesting and weird. I did like it, but there were some issues that I had with it, but they're not too big. I still enjoyed it. This one is with Cameron and Violet. And Cameron is actually, I believe, the mayor of Boston. And he's part of the Syndicate, which is like this mafia, like underground. They're involved in everything. And it's these 4 guys. They're like very close-knit. They're like, it's a very, you know, found family aspect between these guys. And then you have their wives. They all live in like this community too, where all their houses are like in this secure location all together. So they like literally live like right next to each other. So there's a lot of found family in this. But Cameron needs to, he's actually kind of being forced, but not fully forced to do an arranged marriage with another politician's daughter to help him out in the political arena because his goal is to become a senator. And he's not really into it, but he kind of has to get married. The problem is that this daughter has a lot of issues. Violet has major germophobia, and she doesn't leave her room. She's managed to make a livable life that way because she's a pro gamer. She's like one of the top gamers in the world, and she also creates her own video games. So, but her parents are done with her. They've tried therapy. They've tried all these things to get her to live a life, and she's just secluded in her room. She doesn't let people touch her. She's scared to go outside. So she's got a lot of issues. And now Cameron has to like take her in, his wife. And he's a very sexual guy and she's a germaphobe. So he's like, what am I going to do? There's even a point where he pierces his, you know, so because he's like, they are always faithful to their women. And he's like, well, I have to be faithful to my woman, but she won't let me touch her. So I might as well get this to help me through that process. Anyways, so he kind of like forces her out of her shell. He like makes her go outside once they get married. She's living with him. Like he's trying to force her into facing her issues instead of just locking herself away, which I did like that. They do this tit for tat thing where she wants to know him and get information on him, and he doesn't like being vulnerable. So he'll tell her things, but she needs to like reveal, like, because she always has like gloves or stuff on, and so he wants her to reveal herself to him. So this is good. I liked their connection. It was interesting. My problem is that for somebody that was that big of a germaphobe, she gets past it pretty quickly to the point where like they're full on making out. I mean, blowjob stuff going on, like, and you're a germaphobe. So I felt like if she was that severe, it would have taken a little bit longer to get her to overcome those issues. And then their communication was just shit. Like, they would get in the same arguments over and over, and then she would run off to her room and lock herself in her gaming room. And it just happened over and over, so I was kind of, like, over that dynamic. But I did really love her, like, finding this found family, the other women, and them coming together. There were some hot sex scenes in this. And so I did enjoy it, just not as much as I enjoyed the last one. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars and 3.5 chilies. And then I read Falling Away by Penelope Douglas. I'm trying to finally finish a lot of this Falling Away series and other Penelope Douglas books that I've put off. Because I know she has kind of like the second generation, I believe, books. So This is the third book in the Falling Away series, and this is between Jax and Casey. I loved Jax. He is actually the brother, I think it's Jared from The Bully. And he was like, came from a really bad home with their father and severely abused, damaged hero, but he's kind of like a badass kind of hacker dude. So I was really excited. I really wanted to read his book. But then I found out it was Casey, and I didn't really like her in Bully. Like, she had, like, kind of flirted and hung out with Jared, even though her best friend Tate was being extremely bullied by him, and then was trying to tell Tate to, like, just get over it and that kind of thing. And, I mean, she was doing it to make her ex-boyfriend jealous at the time, but I was like, dude, like, that's the guy that bullied your friend for years. So I was very irritated on my reread of Bully by Casey. So I was worried that I wouldn't really like her in this book. But she was an interesting character. It was kind of sad because her parent, like that her sibling had died. And so like her dad, like I think blamed himself and all this stuff. He ended up going like in a mental institute, and he would call her the sister's name. And so she basically Casey wasn't even her name. That was like her sister's name. And she had to go by it and basically be kind of like that substitution child. So it was just very sad. But she's always had this kind of interesting connection to Jax. Jax always wanted her. And she had gotten arrested, and her boyfriend had like cheated on her, and she kind of attacked him, and she, has to come home for like her hometown for community service. And so she's staying next door to where Jax lives, and they start to interact. And, you know, he comes off kind of like an asshole in the beginning, but he was really obsessed with her. But he does have a lot of issues from what happened to him when he was a child and stuff. So you get some flashbacks. So just be aware for those triggers of abuse. But I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. And I would say it's about a 3 chilies. So it was good. It just didn't really blow me away. It might be because I'm not totally connected to Casey's character. Okay, so then I read another arc, you guys. So I read Micalea Smeltzer's new release. I believe this one, I'm not sure the date that it comes out. So it's not out yet, so I don't want to go too full into details for you guys. But I really loved this. This is 1111, sorry. And this is a reverse age gap, small town type of romance, and I really loved it. Like, I really loved this. We have Via, and she is 32. She was recently got divorced. She kind of picked up, like, quit her job. She was a lawyer. She never really wanted to be a lawyer, but her parents, like, kind of pressured her into doing that kind of a career, but she was wanting to go to art school when she was younger. So when everything happens with her catching her husband, like, cheating on her and knocking up his, like, secretary, she basically gets a divorce, quits her job, packs up her life, and moves across the country to, I believe it's in Maine, and they were in San Francisco before. And so her parents aren't very supportive of that, but she wants to pursue what she wants to do. She buys this building like sight unseen, and it's basically kind of like falling apart. So she has to hire like a reno team to come like redo, like really work on the construction. And she's living in a place above it, and she's going to open kind of like this art store kind of thing. So when she gets there, I love her and her sister's relationship. They're super close. Her sister's kind of like an influencer, like really big star, and they are constantly talking. The sister visits a few times throughout the book. Like, I really loved their like amazing supportive dynamic. But her sister's like, you need to get out there and have a one-night stand, get out there and go for it. So she goes to a bar, and she ends up kind of like seeing this really hot guy that she's kind of immediately drawn to. He immediately zeroes in on her. He's like this, but he is really young. So he's 21, and this is Reed. And he has like glasses, but he's like very like, he could be a model. He's just adorable. And he comes up and he's very suave with her, and they end up going home together. They have this amazing night together, but she doesn't want to give him her number. Just leave it. Like, we'll never see each other again. You could tell, like, he was all in from the beginning. This is another cinnamon roll, like, a golden retriever hero. He's so amazing. He's mature for his age. He's just wonderful in this book, like a amazing book boyfriend. And he wanted more immediately, but he was like, you know, not gonna force it. But she ends up later going on a date because her sister kind of also comes to visit and kind of gets her to go on a date with like her contractor. And the date's good. It's going okay, but he has an emergency at home. So he drops off. He stops at home and she kind of goes in with him. And who does she run into but Reed? And that's his father. So I just loved it because and it's not too like creepy with like the dad, because honestly that first date kind of never went anywhere because he's got so much going on in his life. And like her and Reed just start kind of secretly seeing each other. And you're going to have those hangups of like, I'm too old for you. There is a trigger warning in this for infertility issues because that was a big problem in her marriage. You know, in previous like talk of like miscarriages and stuff. So just be aware of that. But I do think Micalea Smeltzer handled that really well. I just loved this so much. It was such like a feel good, really built this cute little town. There was great side characters. You know, I really loved Reed's character. He was so supportive and mature and like was just trying to support her. Like this book was very like going after your dreams, and it's like never too late to go after what you want and start over. And so I really loved it. It was so sweet. So I highly recommend this. I ended up giving it 5 stars and 3.5 chilies because they have such an amazing connection. There's like, they get to really know each other. She slowly builds them when they start dating. After having a couple hookups, like he doesn't have sex with her for a while because he wants to get to know her and woo her. And so that just makes us so much more. Like I loved it. It had the perfect spice, but romance, so it's not too heavy on the spice, which we've been seeing a lot lately in books. So I highly recommend it. It was so good. Okay, real quickly, my last book that I read, I continue with Ice Planet Barbarians. I read Barbarians Lady. This is the 13th book in the series, and it's still amazing. I mean, these are quick reads. I ended up listening to this on audiobook. It is available on Audible Plus. So when you have a higher speed too, like you can go through those books super fast. This is between Herrick and Kate is one of the newer female women that have, you know, been taken. They were like slaves before that basically they picked up because they needed more females. And she's like a really big, tall woman. And so she kind of has insecurities and hang-ups about her height. And Herrick is immediately like brings up how tall and amazing and whatever she is, and she thinks he's making fun of her and picking on her, so they kind of have a bad start, but he's actually like thinking he's giving her a good compliment because, you know, this is alien species, they kind of have different ways of handling things. So they end up going on, they're traveling to go to that original spaceship, you know, where they got all the language and everything, and he ends up taking her for a shortcut or another thing so he could get her alone to kind of try and woo her. So they kind of go through this like ice area, and an accident happens, and then they're in their own little cave, and it was just so cute. And there were like, I just really enjoyed it. There's not too much I can say. These are kind of like a guilty, I don't know if I'm guilty, but they're like my guilty pleasure. They're like a good palate cleanser. I love this series so much. So I gave this one 4 stars and 3 chilies, and it was another amazing one. So those are my books so far for the first half of January. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you're reading or if you've enjoyed any of the books that I read just now. As always, thank you so much, and I will see you on the next one.